AI is not going to take our jobs, but it is going to take some of our tasks, at least the ones that we can give to it. And as a business owner, this is something that we should be embracing. This is a video about the engineering mindset for business owners. I originally came across this idea from reading Work the System by Sam Carpenter, and now, after many years and scaling multiple businesses to over $1 million, I can say that it has had a huge impact on my life. Importantly, the engineering mindset is something that can become supercharged when you add AI into it. This is about taking apart your business into its interlocking pieces and finding areas that you can augment and scale with AI. My name is Garik Tate. I am an AI strategy consultant, and what you're about to watch is a presentation that I did for Cultivate Advisors. Cultivate is an international company that specializes in consulting and exit planning for business owners. And this is a presentation that I gave to them on the engineering mindset. I hope that you enjoy, and I hope you get as much out of this presentation as they did. All right. With that, let's now talk about automation, the engineering mindset. This is something that I am absolutely obsessed about when it comes to AI. So everything we've been talking about so far has been about giving team members access to AI tools to make them more effective. But what if we took it a step further? What if we asked ourselves, how can we use AI in order to automate steps of a process to free up the humans to do more of their best work? So I call this the engineering mindset. The engineering mindset starts off with mapping out the business processes. So you can see here is an example of a business process used by one of our sister companies, 2XU, in order to sell clients on VA services and then hire premium level VAs to support those clients. It starts off with booking an appointment call. Before the call actually takes place, the sales call, you do research on the client, have the sales call, and then onboard the client before handing off the material over to recruitment, because recruitment has to actually recruit the talent that the client will be working with, create the job description and questionnaire, reach out to potential applicants, evaluate them if they're qualified, and then go through the interview process before actually onboarding the client. Just like most businesses, there's a lot of manual work inside these steps. But what if we took a different point of view? What if we ask ourselves, how can AI automate this process? Well, there are a lot of tools out there that could be used to automate different steps of this process. But how do you know which step is the right tool for automating or augmenting with AI? There are two things you need to look at when you're looking at a particular step of a process. You need to ask yourself, does that step have clear inputs and clear outputs? And you need to ask yourself, is this step causing pain? What do I mean when I say clear inputs and outputs? The inputs and outputs need to be clear, digitally accessible, and plentiful. In the modern day, AI can really complete any task, no matter how complicated it is, if there is very clear inputs, very clear outputs, lots of examples, and it's digitally accessible. AI at this point is, I would say, a black box that can solve just about any problems if these criteria are met. And the better and better AI we create, and the more and more tools out there on the market, the more and more true this becomes. But if the steps are unclear, or if the inputs and outputs are unclear, where it's unclear exactly what's trying to be accomplished, it's unclear exactly what has to be received in order to accomplish a task, or there's no examples of it being done, or it's something that AI can't even access, maybe something in the real world, or something that AI doesn't have the sensors for, or the ability to interact with, well then yeah, AI is not going to be the right tool for that job. But if it is the right tool for the job, you still have to ask yourself, is this something you really want to automate? Is it currently causing you some sort of a problem? You don't want to waste time solving problems that aren't there. For me, I think about problems in 4 different dimensions. One is that step of the process that is reducing the throughput for growth. If so, it's a bottleneck. Is it currently the bottleneck for our growth? 2, is it crappy and just boring work? Is it the kind of work that we would want team members or ourselves going to work every day solving those kinds of problems? Or is it kind of boring or just not very fulfilling? Is it expensive? Is it using valuable resources? Is it a step that is error prone where we're getting consistently bad results? These are steps that you should be looking to first when automating and augmenting with AI. Once you've selected the step, it's actually time to automate it. And the best tools for that are Zapier and Make.com. Zapier, I would say, is the market leader, but I recommend Make.com because Make.com is better for engineering longer, more multi-step processes, which is what we're going to be exploring today. And I would also say Make.com, after you build with it, I would say it's a little more intuitive, but it does have a sharp learning curve. So if you are already comfortable with Zapier, feel free to continue with that. Or if you're not sure which one to pick, you can experiment with both. So let's pick a step. Let's pick a step here that we want to automate. Let's go with doing research. So if you remember, this is a step after the customer has booked an appointment, but before you have a sales call. And let's ask ourselves, is this a good step to automate? Well, what are the inputs? What are the outputs? The inputs is the customer's email, very consistent, always there and always in the same format. You have the customer's company name, because maybe you put that as one of the questions that they have to fill out before they book the call. And you can take any additional notes on the purpose of the call. Now, the reality is most of the time the prospect is going to leave that blank. So we sadly can't really rely on that. And the output is, well, first of all, implicitly or explicitly, the salesperson needs to make a decision to proceed or not. And the second output is that the salesperson is informed about the prospect's background and therefore can have a better sales call. The process is a salesperson has to comb through Google, LinkedIn, social media, etc., in order to get the data. The pain, if we evaluate is this step worth automating, the pain is pretty decent. It's not a high bottleneck because the sales calls will happen anyways, but it is kind of boring work. It's not super crappy work, but it's pretty boring. But it turns out that this step is often very, very expensive, at least for the company that we were doing this for 2XU, because the founder was doing most of the sales calls. So it's expensive for the founder to be the one to do this kind of research, and therefore it was often breaking down and often skipped. So let's ask ourselves, how can we automate this with AI? So we could build a process like this with Make.com. Quick disclaimer, in reality, a lot of these steps would have more than one module inside of it, but what's shown here is simplified for brevity. It's a realistic depiction of the flow, however. Just know that some of these steps would have more than one module in order to capture them. Let's break down what we could automate with Make.com and with AI here. Section 1 is just starting the process. Section 2 is doing the research. And Section 3 is transforming and delivering the data to the founder or to the salesperson. Section 1 starts the process. The very first module in Make.com is going to be a Calendly module because this is where the prospects book the calls. So the prospect books an appointment and it triggers the chain. This whole process, you can see it can be built directly into Make.com. And it starts off when the Calendly is booked. The next step is that Make.com checks the CRM. In this case, we use HubSpot for it. Checks the CRM if the prospect is already there. If not, it creates a record for that contact. Or if that prospect is already there, it just updates that contact information. Next, it does some independent research. We can use Phantom Buster in order to scrape that person's LinkedIn using the email to return the first result and scrape everything on that prospect's LinkedIn. We can use Apollo. Apollo is a very useful tool. Essentially, it provides a lot of services, but we use it like a data broker company where you can get information on that prospect. For instance, what company they're associated with, how many employees that company theoretically has. You can also get some more of their contact information. Just a very, very useful tool. And you can use a tool like relevance.ai in order to scrape that company's website. So once, because we have their website from Apollo, or if the prospect gave it to us directly, we can scrape it with relevance in order to get a returned summary about what that company is about as it's displayed on their website. Once we have all that information, we can load it up into the CRM. And we can then create a report written by AI, because when we get this report, it's going to be a whole bunch of separate data points that will be hard to summarize and synthesize. That's where ChatGPT comes into play. We send all this data to ChatGPT and get a summary and or an official opinion if the sales call should be proceeded with or not. We send that data to Craft My PDF, which is just another module, and we will then give ourselves that report via email. And this email could be sent immediately when the prospect books a call, or it could be sent just hours before the call, almost like a reminder to the salesperson. Very, very useful process if the salespeople are not doing this step or not doing it very, very effectively. So that's one example. What's another example we could use for automating the manual steps of this process? Well, let's look at evaluating the candidates for the recruitment process. This is after we've created the job description, after we've already started reaching out to potential applicants, but it's before the first initial interview is booked. As always, inputs and outputs. What's going on here? Well, the inputs are we get the candidate's resume. It's in a PDF or a Word doc format. That's very consistent. We get the candidate's form submission. We used to use Google Forms for this, but now we use JotForm. But we get their submission. We have the job description associated with that job role, and we have any additional notes about the minimum requirements that we get from the client. The output is we decide to proceed or not. We either send them a decline email or we send them a templated booking email with a Calendly link. The process is that we have to review the applicant's information and compare it against the job description and the client's notes. And what is the pain? Well, in this particular instance, the pain was extremely high because hiring talent was actually the bottleneck for 2XU when we were doing this process. It was the number one bottleneck for growth. It was very crappy and repetitive. Its expense was not super high for the recruiters based on an hourly rate, but it was still the bottleneck for growth. And I would say actually when we implemented this, it actually was breaking. I wrote down not breaking here, but I would say this process was breaking down because applicants were not consistently getting responses. So sometimes they would be declined, but they never received a decline email because the recruiters were just kind of overwhelmed with how many moving pieces there were. And a lot of people were just slipping through the cracks. So how can we automate this process? Well, it can look a little something like this. Let's break this down into sections. It starts off with getting information, making the decision, and then contacting the applicant. So step one, getting the information. Well, JotForm kicks off the entire process. Once JotForm is submitted, make.com is triggered, and it gathers that information from JotForm before proceeding. The next step is that we get the job description information. In our case, we use Notion for storing all of our job descriptions and also our applicants. We're big Notion fans for processing data and storing data. So we get the job description from Notion, which gives the AI necessary context when going on to the next step. We then send that information to ChatGPT in order to get an official opinion. So by using ChatGPT's assistant feature, you can use custom functions. If you actually remember when I was talking about here, the custom actions, even if you do not create code for these actions, you can still have the AI respond with what is essentially a JSON format, which allows you to get much more consistent results in the format of how ChatGPT responds, which means you can simplify its answer just a simple yes, no. Using custom functions, we were able to standardize results from ChatGPT and then use that as a trigger point for the next step of the process, which is sending the applicant either a decline, a rejection letter, or a scheduling email to take on the next step. Just a little note about this process, and because I think we as consultants will come across this very, very often, these types of situations. When we were first going through this process with 2XU, their main problem was not that they really needed AI. It was that they needed to standardize the inputs and outputs. Most of our time was spent with them was standardizing and simplifying how the inputs came in and standardizing and simplifying the outputs that came out, creating templates, standardizing the Notion database. And once that work was done, adding in the AI was remarkably simple and remarkably easy. And the punchline after doing this process with 2XU is that they were able to triple the number of applicants they were able to hire every single month, which led to them doubling the business in just one quarter. So AI can definitely make a big impact onto your clients' businesses. And those are just some of the steps you can automate with AI. At this point, that's the end of the presentation. Feel free to scan the bit.ly link in order to get access to these slides. Thank you guys so much.
Hey, you made it to the video. I knew we were friends. I knew I could trust you. If you really liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, we're not friends anymore. Make sure to leave your comments down below.